Jean-Marie Miassou is not a historian. He's simply curious about the past and fascinated by the history of Amboise. It's this curiosity led him to discover historical elements that he wishes to share with others. Scattered throughout the town of Amboise are traces of 20th century businesses. They flourished in their heyday, but alas have since disappeared. For instance, around 1900, the site which the Leonardo da Vinci Park now occupies was host to two businesses. One of them was the Pateau Leclerc blanket factory, which evolved from producing horse blankets to blankets for rail travellers. The other one was the Charles Mercier Hosiery Company. These two businesses were replaced in 1937 by the Guilleminot Bosfolk factory, whose Chantilly plant had become too small. Initially, the company produced photographic film for individuals, and after the war it diversified its activities to include radiographic film for medical use. At its peak, it had employed 180 people, but given that its products were no longer adapted to the market, the factory closed in 1994. The site was purchased by the Clos Lucé, which created the Leonardo da Vinci Park and several exhibition halls dedicated to the artist. Not far from the park, the Gounin brothers factory functioned for several decades. At the beginning of the 20th century, Albert and Émile Gounin set up a shoe factory in Amboise near the Belfry. It was destroyed by a fire in 1913, so a new factory was built at the end of the St. Thomas Walkway. It employed some 450 people and produced up to 3,500 pairs of shoes per day. Its manager, Émile Gounin, served as mayor of Amboise from 1919 to 1953. The company was wound up in 1985, and the buildings were demolished to make way for the car park known as des Tanneurs. At the end of the 19th century, Gustave Peuzon created a factory producing fishing tackle. The company was eventually renamed Peuzon and Michel, and the brand name Luxor achieved worldwide fame, notably with two flagship products, reels and split bamboo canes. The split bamboo was used for fly fishing, but in the 1960s the company faced a formidable competitor, fiberglass, which was much cheaper to produce. By the 1970s, split bamboo was scarcely in demand, and the Peuzon and Michel company began to decline. It moved to La Boitardière, and in doing so, it abandoned its city centre site to a Netto store. The saga of the Mabille press began with Jacques-Emmanuel Mabille, who, in 1835, set up a locksmith's workshop in the Bout des Ponts at the north side of the river. Around 1850, he and his son started manufacturing presses essentially destined for viticulture. These gained worldwide recognition, and the company exported as far afield as Japan, the United States, and South Africa. Subsequently, its product range expanded to include cider presses, grape pumps, apple crunchers, and oil presses. The Mabille company closed down in 1984, but its premises still exist and are patiently awaiting reuse, having been purchased some 20 years ago by the Val d'Amboise community of municipalities. Among the monuments that constitute an important part of Amboise's past, the bridge has played a major role. In reality, when I say the bridge, I'm referring to the succession of bridges that have spanned the Loire here, and their history is well worth recounting. The very first bridge can be traced back to the Romans, at the time of Julius Caesar and the Gallic Wars. Apparently it was destroyed in 290 under Emperor Diocletian. Subsequent bridges, about which little is known, followed until around 1115, when Hugues I, Count of Amboise, replaced the pontoon bridge with a stone structure. This bridge, composed of two branches which met on the Ile d'Or, was 6 meters wide, a considerable size for the time, and was located upstream of the current bridge. The remains of its piers can still be seen when the Loire's water level is low. This bridge gained a very unique status. Residents of Amboise bequeathed houses, land and vineyards to it, turning it into a legal entity that drew revenue and paid taxes, as did the bourgeois. Its statutes even conferred it the title of a lord, and it owned an estate, which reflects its importance to the citizens of Amboise. Its prominence was further enhanced by the fact that, until 1753, it was on the pilgrimage route to Santiago de Compostela. At its southern end, at the foot of the castle, stood a sort of tower which is clearly depicted in this engraving from 1646 by the Dutch painter Lambert Doumer. The tower was demolished in 1739. Here we see the northern section of the bridge, as depicted by Frans van der Meulen in 1673. In 1710 it was swept away by ice and replaced in 1712 by a wooden bridge downstream of the previous one, called the Red Bridge, due to its colour. Likewise, this bridge was also destroyed by ice on 19th of December 1789, after which a ferry service was set up by Léonard Perrault, a local entrepreneur. In 1812, work began on a new northern section of the bridge. It was to last 8 years and was carried out once again by Léonard Perrault and his son Grégoire. This section was named after Louis XVIII, the contemporary French monarch, and a monument was erected in his honour at the entrance to the bridge. Here you can see the bridge in an artwork by the English artist William Callow. Unfortunately, the bridge, partially made of wood, proved fragile and was replaced in 1846 by the bridge we know today. Meanwhile, the old southern bridge was still in service, as seen in a photo taken by William Fox Talbot on 18th of June 1843. But in 1846, 3 arches collapsed and were replaced by a suspended section. However, it transpired, amongst other issues, that the bridge obstructed the Loire's flow during floods. Thus, in 1867, work began on constructing a modern new section aligned with the northern arm. This bridge was almost complete, but had not yet been opened, when, on 12th of December 1870, to delay the arrival of the Prussian army, it was blown up along with the suspended section of the old bridge. Once again, it was rebuilt and inaugurated on 24th of June 1874. As for the 12th century Hugues d'Amboise bridge, it was demolished. For over 50 years, the bridge was left in peace, but in 1940, Germany invaded France and, faced with the threat of its advancing army, once again the French military resolved to destroy the southern bridge. It was blown up on 18th of June that year, after which, in order to cross the Loire, boats were used. 1 month later, a wooden bridge was built by French prisoners condemned to forced labour. It was swept away by ice in December of the same year. A ferry service transported residents across the river until 1944, when a one-way metallic bridge was set up. On 15th of August 1944, as the Germans retreated north, they destroyed the metallic bridge and 2 arches of the northern bridge. The bridge was repaired in January 1945, and the northern bridge shortly thereafter. But it was not until April 1954, 14 years after its destruction, that a new southern bridge was put into service. As for the metallic bridge, it was dismantled and for 60 years spanned the Cher River in Civray, before ending up on a roundabout in Bléré, where it's enjoying a well-earned retirement. But its piles are still solidly anchored in the Loire, and their presence still sparks debate.